it was a ripoff. Honestly, being a UFC fan the last few years has not been a good value. You have to pay a monthly subscription just to buy a pay-per-view that most people are probably illegally streaming anyway. It
That
was,
was the worst decision they could have ever made when they said, "Okay, we're going to make pay-per-view gated
yeah.
by an ESPN Plus subscription." I could not believe how ridiculously stupid and short-sighted that was. Welcome back to Against the Cage, your MMA home for all the fight previews, recaps, and interviews you are looking for. Make sure you like and subscribe to stay in the loop with us. I'm Scott Fontana. I'm joined as always by Erich Richter, although we are without Jake Arrier this week, who is off. But Eric, it's just you and me. We're gonna hold this down. I think we've
Yeah, we
got
got
this.
this. Got it. Got
Let's
it on
we're
lock.
g- we can handle the end of the ESPN era for UFC, I think, right? Right.
I think
So
so. I'm
let's
excited to talk about it
yeah,
though.
let's get into it. We're gonna get into what happened at the UFC Apex in again that final show on the worldwide leader. And of course we saw the final victory on ESPN for the UFC. Manel Kopp going out there and just blasting Brandon Royval. And obviously, you and I last week, we were a little surprised by the odds being so slanted in Copp's favor. I don't know if that was, this was just a vindication of that, or if it's just kind of the way things worked out. I still feel like there's permutations where this fight goes differently, but man, you got to give him credit. It was impressive. So the question, Eric, is for you. Did he do enough to leap to the top of that flyweight title picture?
It sure seems like it, right? And and ratings wise, I hadn't seen what I know he was 8 coming into the fight. I haven't seen what he is now. But for me, I think Manel Kapp's more he's a striker, right? And Joshua Van's also a striker. So who knows where Alexandra Pantoja is going to end up in in terms of injuries and health and all that jazz. If they want to get Joshua Van turned around quickly, and he's young enough, he's 24. He took zero damage in the title fight that ended inside of a minute. I think that there's I think it makes a lot of sense if you wanted to give Manel Kopp the opportunity. And again, and so here's a couple things to think about. The Muhammad Mokaev fight definitely rubbed the UFC the wrong way. So if it didn't happen, I know that the UFC didn't love the Manel Kopp Muhammad Mokaev fight. But again, that's a grappler versus striker, so it's a little bit different. This is more striker striker. It just depends. The UFC is pretty upset with Arman Sarzukian, and for me, I'm still working on the pronunciation of that name. But UFC is definitely
One
holding
day.
it. We're working on. That was not terrible. So, the UFC is still kind of going back and forth with him on that. So, who knows where the UFC will be on it. But I mean, Elcop's been in the game for a while. I know we talked about it. He fought Kiori Horiguchi and Ryzen. If you could just go down the list, like even Kaya Zakara he fought and beat in Ryzen. He's been around the game a little bit longer than I think people realize, and he has a credentialed history before the UFC in this weight division as well. So I don't know where you are on this, Scott. I'm in for it. What do you think?
I am in. I think he did enough here. It's exactly really what he needed to be able to get ahead of Tatsuro Taira after obviously Taira had a pretty good performance just a week earlier, but I think this whole, this impressive finish here, coupled with that weird baby themed promo that he cut on Joshua Van afterward, like honestly, it kind of added up into this very strange and weird, but also very MMA space where it's like, you know what? You kind of have to go with him, I think. But again, it like we said last week, I think it really depends on what the UFC wants to do. If they are set on having an event in Japan, and obviously Kopp has some history in Rising fighting in Japan as well, but if they're fighting in Japan, I mean, the reason they're doing it is because it's Tatsuro Taira, a local, possibly beating another Asian champion over there. I think that's easily what they're going to do. If they don't go that route, hey, it makes a lot more sense. But I'm in. I think that actually he does leapfrog Tyra here. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the big question about this fight, and I think coming into it, we were both, like you said, surprised by the betting odds, was where Brandon Royval is at this point in his career. He's 5-5 in his last 10. A lot of those were close. I think we all understand that. But losing the way he did, getting starched there, Kopp did an excellent job in the striking, landing the punches to eventually get the finish. I think we have to have the conversation of where Brennan Royval is. I know that he's a big time star, and I think I look at him as a star. I look at him as he's put on some of the more fun fights that we've ever seen, especially in this division. So where are you at with Raw Dog right now? Is the other question.
So I don't look at him necessarily as a star. I look at him as absolutely one of the most reliable action fighters on the roster, 100%. But I don't know that he has really taken off to that star level, unfortunately, because I think he is fun to watch, and I think that ought to carry more weight than unfortunately it does. But as far as where he kind of is now, it's going to be hard for him to climb back up to the top at this point. I won't say forever, never say never here. And I'm sorry to say it. He is only 32 though, so let's not rule him out entirely. He still has some notable recent wins. Obviously, he did beat Tyra last year. I don't think we can negate that. And he only takes tough fights, right? Like this is a guy who he literally is only they keep saying he's only fought ranked opponents since he showed up in the UFC, and he's mostly done better than not, right? So I think I cannot write him off, but it's just this is a crowded field, right? We've got, Pantoja's out of the mix for a little bit, but there is another fight coming up that they just announced over the weekend. Kyoji Horiguchi, you mentioned earlier, he's going to be fighting Amir Albazi February 7th. That is a strong co-main event for that Apex show in early February. And honestly, that's going to create another potential title challenger as well. So it's only getting more crowded for him. I think maybe like if I was to give I don't know where you feel about this. If I'm gonna give him like a landing spot of where he ought to like, okay, let's give him the next fight. Let's see how he does from there. I'm gonna give him another ranked guy, but a fresh opponent, Steve Erceg. I think that makes some sense.
I thought about Steve Erceg as well. And I like I like the size matchup there. I think that they're both pretty like similar body types and both have long arms and both pretty strong with the striking. So I like that shout. Brendan Royval's, he's got his last fight against Joshua Van, each fighter had over 200 significant strikes. We'll talk about that when we get the fight awards later in this month, but that might be fight of the year, and that's Brandon Royval. He's also had some really interesting fights. That Brandon Moreno split decision back in February was super back in February 2024, a little while ago, but still, I mean, he fought Pantoja for the title, close fight, outstruck Pantoja. Obviously, the takedowns were the deciding factor there, but where to go with Brandon Royval now? I actually was kind of thinking, like Steve Erceg, I liked. Maybe you could do like Almabayev if he beats Brandon Moreno. If you want to give Royval some time off after the knockout. But I know he's always trying to get in there. That's what I just wish he was a little bit better on the mic, I guess. If he was a little bit better on the mic, I think he'd be a bigger star than he is, just based on his fighting style being so chaotic. It kind of reminds me of like a Nate Diaz back in the day, just chaos, always coming forward and also really strong jiu-jitsu. So, it's a tough pill for Royval to lose that one. We'll see what happens. I like the Usyk call out. And then I was also looking at Alex Perez because I feel like they're kind of similar just in terms of their styles, but I'm not so sure.
I think Perez just he seems a little too far off for it. I think
Yeah.
that would be a much lower fight than Royval ought to take. I think he is wise to continue to take all these tough fights, and not that Perez isn't a tough fight, but he's coming off a loss himself. I think that brings him much lower in the pecking order there. Almabayev, not that I hate it. I just don't think it's going to be the best move for him. I think an Ursig fight potentially creates another really engaging battle, like a really exciting battle, and that's the type of thing that, as far as if Brandon Royval has a brand, it's because he's exciting, right? He's not a big talker, right? He's a straight talker. He's just not like someone who seeks the attention. He'd rather just kind of fight, you know. But I don't think he's a drip or anything like that. I enjoy talking with him. But yeah, I would lean more to Ursig. I just think there's better potential for fireworks there. So that's where I'm at. But not a bad idea. I mean, you're still talking about kind of the same type of level fighter there. I like that part.
Yeah, yeah, it's a tough one for Royval. I mean, he moves down to number 4 in the rankings. What's the do we have a fight for Amir Albazi?
I just said he's fighting Kyoji Horiguchi.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You said that before. That was the update. Yeah, that's a good fight. That's a good fight. Maybe we could do the winner of that one if Horiguchi is tied up or whatever. I don't know what's going to happen with flyweight now. Now that
Mhm.
Pantoja's not the champ.
It's true, it's true. But I think ultimately We have some really intriguing stuff going into 2026 in the flyweight division. We'll have to see how that develops as we go on, and hopefully we get some good health updates regarding Pantoja, the former champ, who obviously, honestly, for my money, I'm going to say it again, like I said last week, I still look at him as kind of the number one flyweight, if not the champion. I think there is a difference there, and that's not a knock on Joshua Van. It's just he didn't prove that he was better yet. So, it's more of like a wait and see.
Yeah, I'd say there's many people like you have even if Royval is probably 3 wins away from probably, yeah, unless it's a short notice spot, which he would probably be perfect for.
You never know. You never know. He is a fighter's fighter, I think.
Oh
But
yeah,
obviously that was kind of the big thing coming off of this event here. It was an Apex show. It was a nice Apex
yeah.
show with some good depth to it. And I think speaking to that depth, I've got a haymaker for you here. I don't know how much more we need to spend too much on the main stuff here, but I've got a haymaker I want to throw at you. And the fact that Yaroslav Amosov, who goes out there and just destroys Neil Magny faster than we've seen anyone beat Neil Magny in 12 years. It's the fastest finish of him in all that time. And mind you, Neil Magny has fought so many of the best guys in the last 4 years or so. All of his losses are this: Shavkat Rakhmonov, Gilbert Burns, Ian Machado Gary, Michael Morales, Carlos Praches. We're basically just talking about the title picture. It's all those guys that we were ranking a few weeks ago, save for Kamaru Usman, right?
Yeah.
And obviously Gilbert Burns thrown in there too. This was a few years ago when Gilbert was still of a little higher status anyway. So what that says to me is that Neil Magny is absolutely not a pushover. He beats everybody else. And for Amosov to go in there, UFC debut, passed over initially, he should have been signed immediately. That's someone they should have gone out there and got. I don't care that he was coming off a loss. You go get that guy. And he showed why, because he just destroyed Neil Magny. He's 32, mind you, he's 29 and 1, 21 finishes, former Bellator welterweight champion, ranked as high as seventh at Fight Matrix. So we're talking about someone who was in that elite group here. That was just a couple years ago. You don't go kid gloves with this guy now. You take advantage of what he's got. You push him in there. I want to see him get a really tough fight next. So I'm going to go with, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I like either Sean Brady or Kamaru Usman next,
Whoa.
assuming Usman does not get that title shot.
Oh my goodness, those are some. You're feeding to the wolves, my guy.
Push
I
him.
was
No, man, he's ready for the Wolves. He can. I want to see it. If he's not, I'd rather see it. I think he's ready to at least try.
those are top 10 opponents though. Oh my
I
goodness,
know.
I
I
was
know. I
going
want to see
lower.
it, man.
I was going
No, man,
lower,
push
dude.
him hard,
Oh,
hard. He's
I was,
ready.
dude, I was like Jeff Neal, Gilbert Burns, something
What
like.
you want him to be 30 and 1? He's already 29 and 1, man. I think that's
Yeah,
impressive. I
I
think it's
hear you. I hear
ridiculous.
you.
I
It's
want to
just
see it.
it is a step up. I agree on Amosov. He looked awesome. My I want to rant, and I talked about this guy when I was watching the Contender Series and betting on the Contender Series every day. I was really into especially the episode where Steven Aspelund came onto the scene. And for you guys, everyone that doesn't know him, he's a big guy. He's a 6'5", weighs 261. He dealt with obesity. Look at some of like his online stuff there. But he dealt with obesity. He is not cut. He's not chiseled like every other fighter. He has fought through and seemingly beat obesity at a rate that I don't think I've never seen any body type like that where he has a lot of excess skin. And he comes in there and he looks awesome. He is a fresh face in a heavyweight division that we have needed for a while with a personality and with real life experience. I think people deal with actual problems similar to him, to his, and he's open about it. He's honest about it, and he's motivating about it. He motivated me. I'm sure he motivates other people too. He's young too. I think he's 27 or 28 years old for heavyweight. I mean, he's a baby. The way that I looked at him is like he's like heavyweight Sean Strickland. I don't know if he can grapple, but I know that he's got a really good front kick and a really good jab and a really good cross and good combinations, and he'll back you up, and he's not afraid to be backed up. He had 170 significant strikes in his win over Sean Sharaf. Impressive. That is a record for a 3-round fight at heavyweight for Steve Aspelund in his second
And it
career
only went
fight,
into the second round. It
and
didn't even go
it
to the
was a
third.
second round knockout. So just I mean, all the flowers in the world for Steve Aspelund right now, and I think if the UFC is smart, they used to do those random heavyweight main events, right? Steve Asplund actually would be worthy of being one of those rather than like I remember there was a Curtis Blades versus some random fighter and Blades would just grapple for 5 rounds. I'm not saying that. I'm saying Asplund's giving you action packed. His striking defense is solid, and honestly, I don't want to. I think he has some wars to come here in heavyweight. I think that he could come out on top of a lot of these. Hopefully, his chin can. I was looking up. I was like, what was the biggest, most significant strikes in heavyweight history? Do you want to take a guess? I believe that it's at least top three, if not number one.
I'm
Um,
gonna say a surreal Gone fight would make
there was
sense to me.
Surreal versus Volkov, I believe, had a large significant strike percentage, but that fight isn't looked at very kindly.
No.
Just based on the decision. Parker Porter versus Chase Sherman. What a fight that was! If you remember that one, that one might be need to even be homework, even though it's recent. It's a fun fight. How about for Steve Asplund, Tai Tuivasa? Is that too soon? He's only fought
Yes.
too soon.
I think
Okay.
so.
Okay. All right.
I think we're rushing him, my friend.
Yeah. All right. Well, I was just going down the list. I was like, I kind of want to give him a ranked guy next. Um, does
Man, I disagree. I mean, look, he impressed me, and I'm not trying to, poo-poo your ideas necessarily, but just the idea that I think you gotta at least bring him along a little slower. He's only 27. He's got a lot of time. Heavyweights, I mean, they look like they're in their prime in their mid 30s, so he
Yep.
might be years away from looking like what we kind of expect him to be. Who knows, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. I was super impressed with him. I think that he
You're
has got a
excited.
future. Yeah. Hey, I get excited. Um,
That's all right.
and I think that there's a future for him at heavyweight, no doubt. And I think that one day he will own the record for significant strikes in heavyweight. I wouldn't be surprised
Can,
at all.
can I tell you a little fun factoid that maybe you're not aware of about
Yes.
this fight that just happened? He and Sean Sharaf, they earned the first UFC heavyweight division's fight of the night since Surreal Gone beat Tai Tuivasa September 3rd, 2022. It's been 3+ years since a heavyweight fight got fight of the night.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. This doesn't happen very often, so we got to appreciate when we get one
Yeah.
of those things where it's like, yo, these heavyweights, you got to go watch that fight back. That was a good one. We
Yes.
actually had it. But that is a wrap for again the UFC's ESPN era. We're done, man. We're already seeing people cancel their subscriptions. Bilal
Yep.
Muhammad canceled. I saw the guy Ben Folks over at the Uncrowned has canceled his as well. I'm seeing them left and right. Everyone's kind of like, "Yo, I'm outie. Peace" on
Yep.
the ESPN eras. But before we kind of decompress, or I guess maybe we are decompressing here, Eric, I want to ask you because you were watching the sport, you were following the sport, same as I was back when the ESPN deal was announced, when it finally debuted back at the beginning of 2019. So I'll ask you, how did the ESPN era go relative to what you expected or maybe what you were hoping for back at, again, that January 2019 when you were coming in all excitement, I would imagine, right?
Oh, super excited. So I just for everybody to know, I was watching UFC back when it was on Fox. So, but I wasn't really prior. So I wasn't like a Spike TV guy. And I know that they had a lot of random places where they were showing their fights as well. So it wasn't quite Spike TV. I've obviously gone back and watched them. But so when ESPN came along, I think that everybody expected, more of like a professional suit to the product, and you did get that in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways it stayed the same in terms of the production. The UFC still controls the production, all of the talent. While they might be employed by ESPN, they're obviously signed off by the UFC in pretty much every way. So there's this has been a success, right? Inarguably, seemingly, it's been a success. The UFC is able to now go to Paramount and get $1 billion a year for 7 years. They're getting the bag, right? So from that business perspective, super great. It's been up and down though, and I think that just to say goodbye to ESPN, I have to just go through some of the good things and the bad things. All right, good things. The UFC it offered, obviously, it made it more of a legitimate sport. I feel like in a lot of ways, and the mainstream coverage was really good for fans going on ABC a bunch, going on ESPN, ESPN2 for prelims of pay-per-view
I
fights.
didn't think they were on ABC enough, though.
No, they
I'll be
weren't.
honest with you. They didn't nearly take advantage of it the way they should have, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure that was a Disney decision. I'm sure if the UFC could get that, they would have. So I don't know exactly the details there, but yeah, that is a good point. They should have been on there more, and it would have been better for. for everybody. But hardcore fans are happy to see it go. And I think that we know, and one of the biggest complaints I think everybody has, and probably including the UFC, is they milked us dry. They like ESPN and Disney milked the fans dry. It was a ripoff. Honestly, being a UFC fan the last few years has not been a good value. You have to pay a monthly subscription just to buy a pay-per-view that most people are probably illegally streaming anyway. It
That
was,
was the worst decision they could have ever made when they said, "Okay, we're going to make pay-per-view gated
yeah,
by an ESPN Plus subscription." I could not believe how ridiculously stupid and short-sighted that was. I
yep,
mean, realistically, why would you ever want to limit your ability to get more people to watch your product? I understand they're pushing ESPN Plus subscriptions, but it was way to a fault. And
yep,
and, and I think that probably that wasn't necessarily the UFC's preferred option. I would think, they were probably at the mercy of their deal and probably saw at the very beginning, I would imagine, really good things coming from that. But I think ultimately, to very quickly, and that was like a few months into the
yep.
deal, they said, okay, you're going to have to buy. To be able to buy our pay-per-views, you got to get an ESPN Plus subscription. That was one of the worst calls that I think they could have made through the entire life of this deal.
Well, so then it compounds because their app sucked. So it was difficult to sign in, and then it would crash when you try to purchase it. So then everyone's in the lurch, like, is my credit card being charged? I want a refund because the app doesn't work. So that created a huge hiccup between ESPN and UFC and the fans. All three parties are upset. Also, the price of the pay-per-view, I believe, was 49.99 when the deal was signed in 2019. It moved up. It's $80. It was $80 by the end, which is
I
just
don't remember
outrageous.
where I think it was a little higher, I want to say, than that when it started, but yes, it just skyrocketed over the life
It
of
just
that
kept
deal. It
going
just
up and
was
up and
too
up and
much.
up.
Hmm.
I think it culminated really at UFC 313, where I think the UFC and TKO had had enough of the issues with the app. UFC 313, there was issues. UFC was upset. ESPN was trying to defend themselves, saying, it was just the app, it was a glitch, it was a one-time thing. Everyone else had access to whatever. I think that was the writing was on the wall. I think I pretty much told everybody back in March that they weren't going back to ESPN.
I mean, we're in year 7 and they're still doing that. I mean, that's ridiculous, you
It's
know.
terrible. It's unacceptable. And then the last pop shot was when back in the day when Disney shut down Fight Island when it was supposed to happen that one time where Dana was like, "We're doing Fight Island," and then he's like, "I got a call from the boss at Disney who said I'm not allowed to do it." So there you go.
Man, I tell you, obviously, there were successes, right? Like you're not wrong. There were things that they did right. I think they legitimized it as an even more um mainstream type sport. Obviously, there's always going to be a certain level of this sport that is not for the mainstream. It's just the way it is. But it's now reached a point where of ubiquity, I would say, in kind of the same way that like, hey, tennis is there and golf is there. It's not for everybody, but it's certainly on, I think, that level in terms of the average sports fan's thinking now. That's how I look at it. But I think again, going back to the ESPN Plus situation where they made everything, just about everything, be on ESPN Plus. You used to be able to flip through the channels and find FS1 and you could watch it, or you could find FS2 or whatever. Even way back in the day, it used to be on Fuel, man.
Yeah.
Remember Fuel
Yep.
TV?
Yep.
Yeah, you used to be able to just find it. And obviously, we do have a world now that is much different, right? Like the streaming situation is what it is. But when you're trapping everything behind ESPN Plus, you're saying if you don't have the subscription, you're not going to even find a gateway to appreciating 75% of the fights they put on throughout the year. And again, if you don't have that subscription, you also can't get the other 25% that are the major ones. So, how
Exactly.
are you going to decide that you really like it if you cannot wade your way into it? I think they completely spit the bit there. They should have pumped heavily onto trying to get, especially on ESPN2. Like ESPN2, it should have been a total fixture. I know ESPN, big ESPN, you can only do so much, especially in the fall. College football is going to take over.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But man, there were so many opportunities they could have done more. And honestly, I think they dropped the ball a little bit. I do think that as much as the sport has grown, um, we now almost reached a point where hardcores were carrying the fan base to a much higher degree than they ought to have. And
Yep.
now they're going to have to see if they can reset that a little bit in the next era, which, we'll talk about that, I think, as we get closer.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
yeah, yeah.
One thing just to piggyback on, I feel like they kind of figured that out at the end, what you just said, but that they should have been a fixture on ESPN too. And I remember I talked with ESPN about this regularly, honestly, trying to figure out like what their strategy is of cable versus plus, because there's so many multi-layered issues here. If it's on cable and you have plus, you still can't view it on plus because you have to have a cable subscription. It's a and then so then if it's only on plus, then you can get it without a cable disaster. But at the end, I think that they realized even during college football season, where there's a lot of college basketball that they're putting on, ESPN News was a pretty much unused channel that ESPN had, and then they started putting prelims on there during busy times. That I feel like they figured it out at the end, too little, too late. And honestly, good riddance. I'm ready for Paramount. I've had enough. One thing to point out as well before we end our discussion about broadcast rights and stuff like that. The numbered events are still pay-per-view in Europe. I didn't realize that. So those on Paramount are going to be they're still going to be selling them as if they're pay-per-view because in Europe, CBS and Paramount, they're not they're not, everywhere, not everywhere in the world. There's just the United States. So I think that's interesting.
Apologies to my friends across the pond and
Oh,
throughout Europe,
tough.
but I'm just gonna take my win over here in the
Yeah.
grand old United States of America and enjoy that I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful you guys will get on board as well next. The only thing I would add as far as the whole thing with ESPN is, look, the pandemic messed up everything, right? It messed up the whole world, and that happened in like near the beginning of year two of that 7 year partnership that ended up being. It was good and bad, right? Because we remember during the pandemic when this sport was kind of the only live thing that was on for a little
Yeah.
while, it created a fan in Jake Arrier, our guy who's
Sure
not
did.
here right now. I'm sure, I think he probably would cite that as at least a big part of why he became a fan. So I'll speak for him a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
But on the other side too, I mean, it just anything that they really wanted to do or that they foresaw that they were going to do, it got thrown off for years. Who knows what they could have been or what they wanted to do and anything like that. So it is what it is. We all kind of had to deal with that. Every sector had to deal with that. But it is one of those what ifs, right? It's a big what if about this time.
Certainly. It certainly is. But yeah, we're on to a new era and I'm pretty happy about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But obviously we do have did you watch PFL too? Because obviously there was some PFL
Yes,
going on over the weekend as well
there
with some
certainly was.
championship fights, some big fights, probably bigger than almost any fight. Well, at least in one case, I would say there was arguably bigger than the main event of the UFC.
Yes.
And that was the heavyweight title fight in PFL, right?
Certainly. So Vadim Nemkov fights Renan Ferreira, who obviously fought Francis Ngannou. Vadim Nemkov did an excellent job with takedowns and bull rushing his opponent, getting double legs, eventually finding the finish via submission, head and arm choke. He looked excellent. He called out Francis Ngannou. Scott, gotta ask what it. Yeah, I know. Gotta ask thoughts on the performance. I know you've been following Nemkov for a while. And do you want to see Ngannou? Do we think it's going to happen? But I'll let you take the floor.
I want to see it. I do. I mean, look, I would rather see Francis Ngannou make his way over to the UFC. It sounds like the bad blood is just too much there, so I don't know if that's ever actually going to happen. But assuming he does even stay in MMA, who knows? Maybe he just says, "All right, I don't need this anymore. I'm just gonna go box." But if he stays in MMA and he stays in PFL, I do like the fight. I'm intrigued in the fight, and honestly, I think Francis Ngannou versus Vadim Nemkov, that's one of the toughest fights you can give Ngannou here because of those takedowns, because of the mix of submission hunting and ground and pound like we saw against Renan Ferreira. I think that would be something that could give Ngannou some real problems. He's smaller but also quicker.
Yep.
That's another dimension. Ngannou's getting older. I want to see what he could do against somebody like Nemkov, and I do have a feeling that like you're talking about the handicapping of the odds all the time. I think if I'm a very amateur handicapper, I would lean toward Nemkov being the favorite.
Oh, that would never happen.
Well, I'm telling you
I,
what, if you're getting plus money on Nemkov, that sounds fun.
I would have to look it up, but I don't remember the last time that Ngannou was. I believe he was favored over John Jones in hypothetical odds. Um,
Look, it's been a while, man. He doesn't fight
yeah,
much in this sport anymore, and again, he is not getting any younger. So there's a lot of reasons why I would go the other way. But that does
fair.
again. Hey, if someone else thinks the opposite, then we've got some very intriguing stuff here. I think so. That speaks to itself. I would love to see that. I think it's really the only fight that has just about any appeal to me next for
Yeah.
Nemkov. Obviously, there you could put him against it's honestly escaping me who won the PFL heavyweight tournament this year. But if you could put him against the winner of that, it's just not even nearly as appealing as an Ngannou fight. You got to do that.
Yeah, I just don't. What is his interest level in even fighting for the promotion is like the underlying question.
Seems pretty low.
Seems pretty low.
Based on his
So
conversation with Ariel Helwani. But yeah, and obviously he's in his weird state. There's he's not really handling the PR particularly well right now with
nope.
with all the Dana White stuff. I felt like there was a ways he could have probably handled that better, and I don't know that he came out smelling like roses on that one, unfortunately. But look, we'll see what happens. People have overlooked much worse in this sport,
Yeah,
frankly. So
good point.
I hope he does fight again. I hope he fights again in this sport because I do like him in this sport. But frankly, I'm almost more interested in him boxing Deontay Wilder too. So who knows?
Jake Paul,
We'll
he
see.
dropped the bag, mistake.
He probably should have fought
He
Jake Paul,
deserves the
yeah, but
criticism for that.
yeah,
Uh,
it is what it is, right?
yeah,
But you know what? There was another championship fight on PFL as well when they had that event in Lyon on Saturday morning here. Chris Cyborg goes out there and just blasts Sarah Collins. I mean, I guess it wasn't a total blasting, right? There was some
for Cyborg.
competitiveness to it, a little bit of back and forth. Well, Cyborg, the thing with Cyborg too in recent years is she's gotten a lot more methodical. She's
Mhm.
not that just like bull rush killer kind of way she used to be. She's now much more like she will break you down and she'll work for the openings and then take advantage of them. It's a much smarter way, and I think it's extended her career a little bit more probably too because it's avoided a lot of unnecessary damage that she wasn't really taking much of anyway. But obviously, this is a 40-year-old woman now, so there's speed will go a little bit, but she's just too good of an athlete for most of these women. And I think we did see that against Collins in this one, third round submission. Not really a rear naked choke, more just like a face crusher there, you know. But I would say to you because this was we're talking about box office here, Eric. Afterward. They asked her what she wants to do next year. She says she wants to have her final fight in mixed martial arts before she focuses on boxing and then kind of winds down her competitive career. She threw out there Leah McCourt, former Bellator contender. Makes some sense if you're talking about the weight class. She also put out there, hey, maybe we do a super fight at a catch weight with Dakota Ditcheva. Now, I do think she seems to be of the impression that Dakota Ditcheva fights at 135 pounds and not 125
Correct.
pounds. Maybe that was kind of the confusion there because it was a weird call out, right? But I ask you anyway. Let's just take it at face value. Good idea or bad idea that they put this fight together?
I guess it depends on which perspective would you say good idea, bad idea for the
For
PF.
you, the enjoyer of this sport.
Okay, enjoyer of the sport, I'm okay with it. The rest
Yeah.
of it, it's tough because, from my perspective, I'm like, Dakota Dishwa is 125. I understand the size. I understand the size, right? Like they're both 5'8". I believe Dakota has a slightly longer reach advantage. Dakota has so much work to do at 125. I want to see her be the champ. I want her to see she will move up in weight at some point. I think we all expect that at some point she will be a 135er. Can Cyborg make 135 at this point? I would say probably
No,
not.
no, she never really could. That was the
Yeah.
whole point of why she couldn't fight against Ronda Rousey. They did these catch weights at 140, and that was like as low as she could possibly get. She was maintaining.
Right.
And that was
So
9 years ago, you
yeah,
know?
there's no my whole thought process was like, is she saying that she can make 135? Because Dakota's not jumping up 20 pounds in weight. Like that doesn't make any sense. So I no. If I'm managing Dakota Ditchville, I'm like no. If I'm the PFL, I'm like no. Like Cyborg, sure, why not? Right? Like we
Yeah.
saw weight classes super matter, especially in women's MMA. They super matter. I think we saw that with Zhang Wei Li versus Valentina Shevchenko. They matter a ton. Cyborg could probably do double under takedowns on Dakota Ditcheva. for 25 minutes and eventually honestly submit her as we saw. Sarah Collins, solid judo throws. Those were fun to watch. But Cyborg's really good on the ground, like really good. So Dakota being a size disadvantage in that fight makes no sense. No. PFL should not do that. Especially they just re-signed Dakota. So it's not like you're on the last fight of her deal and you're trying to milk it for a big fight. Dude, you just re-signed her. Dakota Ditcheva should be the most important person in your company. Paul Hughes' contract is up in like the next like 6 to 8 months. Like they need to build up Dakota now that they re-signed her. Because there's I don't know what the chances are of re-signing Paul Hughes, but I venture to guess not great.
I think you're right, though. PFL absolutely should have basically no interest in
None.
feeding one of their biggest stars to a potential wolf here. I really do think that Cyborg kind of just misunderstood how much bigger she actually was. She did say 135 pounds, and I thought she was saying that regarding where Dakota fights at, not where they
Gotcha.
would meet at. That's how it's, there's a language barrier here, right?
For sure.
English is her second language. She's gotten so
So
much
much better.
better. Chris Cyborg's English is impressive. She worked very hard on that.
When I
And
interviewed her,
kudos to her.
I was like prepping for someone that might need a translator, and then I was like talking to her, and I was like, "Whoa, like this is really good.
No,
He
no,
has
I've
gotten
talked
way
to her
better."
before too. I've
Yeah,
talked to her before too. She's good, but again, I mean, I saw a video of her actually just this morning, and it was her chatting with Henry Cejudo. She said she had just learned the word hectic. I think this was kind of recently. So look, she's still adding English, right? And
right.
it's entirely possible, even outside of the language barrier, maybe she just mixed up what weight class she fights at, Dakota
Yeah,
Ditcheva. So I think 20 pounds is just too big of a barrier. If it was 35, you could say, okay, maybe she does even come up to 45.
right.
You can try that, but 20, this isn't 2010 women's MMA anymore. They are exactly weight classes for a reason. We don't have you had someone like Roxanne Modafferi, the Happy Warrior, way back in the day. She was fighting people at 145 pounds and she was hanging in there. Realistically, she was a 125 pounder the entire time. I mean, these women were always fighting over their size, but we don't have that today. So yeah, I'm gonna chalk it up to that. I don't think Ditcheva's team should have any interest in that fight
No,
either. She gains almost nothing unless she's fully confident she's got this. And I can't imagine that. Look, she is, but maybe her team is like, you know what? Let's pump the brakes on this one. This just might not be the one to
no.
do. Let's save your super fights for later. She's
Yeah,
young. She's got a lot of time.
she's a
Um,
huge star.
maybe her time comes in another promotion at some point as well. When she can have a clean slate when she goes against some of those women, right?
Yeah, like
I'm
I
curious
was,
to
I
see,
was like
but we'll
maybe
see. That's for a different day.
I was like maybe in a vacuum and like Cyborg's still doing it in like a year or two, and Dakota's the 125 champ and is going to move up to 135 and then gets the 135 belt, and then maybe they meet. Like you have to squint in so many different directions. I'm just not into it.
Yeah, too many ifs. I don't like it
Even
either.
for a guy like
I
me,
think we
who's
agree.
I'm
Yeah.
very lenient. I'm very lenient on what we do super fights and weight classes and all that jazz. I had no problem with Zhang Weili, Valentina. I'm very lenient. That one I'm not lenient on. It makes no sense
Yeah,
for anybody besides Cyborg.
I think we can agree. And then, look, there's a PFL Africa this weekend as well. That wraps up PFL's season. That is
Yep.
honestly not the biggest of cards. So that doesn't even get my shout out of a one more fight or for us to go over. But so I think that'll put a bow on PFL for the time being. But there is actually something kind of outside of obviously these fights over the last weekend. Some interesting conversations are happening now with some of our biggest stars, right? Ilya Topuria, there's a lot going on with Topuria, right? But let's focus a little bit on something for the moment. Him and Tom Aspinall have something in common because very recently this week we saw both of them commenting on the idea of boxing, right? And they have kind of different mindsets about that. So when you hear these two names brought up, Eric, where does your mind go with regard to them potentially boxing? Let's start with Topuria too, because his case is different from Aspinall.
Well, yeah, I'll be honest. It feels a little like the state of MMA. I mean, my mind immediately goes to the Muhammad Ali Revival Act, and we can get into that in a second. But my mind goes to the state of MMA and like the fighter pay stuff, and like they obviously see the opportunity to make money in this sport is really small. They're the champ, and they're outwardly looking to go elsewhere. That should not be the case. Right? Those two guys are both the champ. They both should be making over $1 million per fight, like for sure. The fact that they are looking
Significantly more.
significantly more, especially Ilya and Tom Aspinall, who are, it's not like they're the women's strawweight fight champions who just got the belt. Those
You
guys,
got basically the biggest star potentially and the heavyweight champion.
yes.
These are two of the guys that ostensibly would be making the most money.
Yes. So now that the UFC got $7 billion per for 7 years from CBS, there's really no excuse for these guys to be making well over seven figures per fight. Like Conor McGregor always joked that he would make 20 million a fight. True, not true, no idea. But the state of MMA, I think, is the big overarching discussion here. Ilya and Tom Aspinall shouldn't even need to think about potentially going to a sport where they are not as good, have more chance at brain damage, and aren't the champ. The fact that they're looking in that direction is not ideal, and it's bad for the sport. It's bad for the UFC, and I don't know what else to say other than that. We can get into the legalities
Well,
of it, but
well,
yikes.
let me give you something else with with regard to both Aspinall and Topuria here. Topuria was talking about like, hey, he's only got a few more fights left in MMA. He's kind of getting, it almost seems like he's just getting bored with it. Like he feels like he's almost conquered and he just wants to move on, right? But then he's talking about, okay, boxing will be next. I'm gonna focus on it. I'm gonna be a world champ and that kind of thing. He's got aspirations to be the best boxer in the world. And then you've got on the other side of these two here, Tom Aspinall being much more realistic about it. He is saying, look, I'm not going to be a world champ, but these people have dedicated their whole lives to this. And it's a pipe dream, basically, he's dismissed it as. But he just sounded like he wanted to test himself in this sport down the line further, right? Like there's still things he wants to do in the UFC. He's looking to do that first. Obviously, the eyes got to get right first. That's kind of the unsaid thing here. He mentioned Francis Ngannou as a boxing match as something that he would kind of look
Sure.
for. I could see that happening.
Yeah.
Let's 10 years from now, watch, they're gonna box. You know it.
I think Francis will be like 50. I think he's too old.
I don't think he's 50 yet, but also
Well, in 10 years, I
50-year-old
think.
Anderson Silva is fighting this weekend,
I
so I don't see
know.
why that's too old.
I know. But it's heavyweight. I
He's
don't know.
younger than Anderson Silva is.
I guess Butterball was fighting in well into his 40s. Or
Butterbean, my
Butterbean,
friend.
sorry. Butterbean was fighting well into his 50s.
Eric Esch.
Yeah, yeah.
A fellow
It's
Eric
just
Esch.
not good. It's not good for the sport that our champions are trying to be like, I'm gonna go box with Jake Paul because I'll make more in a freak show fight than I will here in a real fight with a real promotion that has money. You can't argue that they don't have money anymore. Also, crickets on fighter pay, bonuses, all of it, crickets after the initial, oh, you guys got $7 billion now, so like everyone's gonna get paid more, right? And then it's like the Natalie Portman meme, right? Right?
But
Right?
here's the thing. Obviously, if we take it down that route of the fighter pay thing, obviously the UFC has never been very forthcoming about how much they're paying the fighters. And
But this
look,
tells you
it
everything.
it it is not a coincidence that once the UFC started to put almost all of their fights in the Apex in Nevada and they couldn't really go anywhere else, that magically Nevada stops making their payouts public.
Yeah.
So midway through 2020, we stopped seeing those figures anymore, so we cannot get an accurate read of what's going on. Totally coincidence, I'm sure. They have nothing related.
Nothing.
Yeah, look, like they're not going to come out and say anything, right? The only thing that we're actually going to get evidence of that they are actually giving more money for is either there's some sort of litigation where they pull it, as we've
Again.
started to see, right, from years ago. That would be the one thing. Another thing it would just be fighters literally saying, "Here's what I made," and showing you proof that that's what they made. And another one, and this is a different case here, but if they do up the bonuses, then we will see that as evidenced as well. If it's not 50K anymore, if it's got to be 100K Danny Gay, then maybe
Has
that's
to be
what we'll
100K.
see. You
Has
know,
to be
we'll
100K.
see. We'll see what happens. It should have been 100K a long time ago,
It
my
should
two
have
cents.
exactly. It was 60
But
G's.
yeah, we'll see.
It was 60 G's when Conor McGregor first started. That was back in 2014, and it went
Well, it
down.
also used to jump around, right? You
Yes.
remember when it used to be, sometimes it was 30,
Yeah.
sometimes it was 60. There was times it went all the way up to 100 or I think 200 even.
Yeah. 200.
But what Dana White had said at the time was, low, we want to make it uniform so people aren't trying to lobby to get on one card or the other. So they settled on 50, which was kind of like a weird number, especially nowadays it's a little low.
Yeah.
But look, it's their money. They're doing what they please with it, and they clearly want to hoard it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know how the motivation is for them to give a lot more. I imagine they will. I imagine fighters will in some way benefit from it, but frankly, we've seen them trying to hit about the 18% revenue share roughly with the fighters, and that's probably what will continue to happen, I would think. But we
So
don't know. We're not privy to it for all the reasons we just said.
So I talked to the UFC, the former UFC CFO. Obviously, he is now the promoter for Jake Paul. His name's Nikisa Badarian. There's a little bit of bias here, and I think that we can understand that. Obviously, he doesn't work for the company anymore, and probably I don't want to put words into his mouth, but in theory, there would be reasons for him to not pump up the UFC. But basically, his whole point was, especially regarding the Muhammad Ali Revival Act, which, if you aren't familiar with it, we've talked about it in the past, just like limiting the fighters' abilities to move between promotions and everything be more uniform like it is in UFC versus boxing. Basically, everything that the UFC and TKO does is good for the shareholders, bad for the fighters. That's what Nikisa said. He's like, that dates back to when I was there. It continues today. You've seen it. The stakeholders are very happy, Nikisa says. He's like, the stakeholders are very happy. Shout out to the stakeholders. I wish I was a stakeholder. I'd be the happiest guy in the world. Unfortunately, nobody cares about the fighters, and that just is what it is.
Yeah, no, and that is true, obviously, unfortunately, but yes, look, that's I think we're used to that. That's just the way it works, right? And obviously, to take it back, obviously, to the boxing kind of idea here, these guys, Ilya Zoporia, Tom Aspinall, for them to even box, number one, they're going to need the UFC to either be on board or for them to be allowed to be freed from their contracts one way or another. I just have a hard time seeing that happening unless the UFC doesn't have much use for them anymore. There is, you might say, hey, maybe not you, I think you understand better, but someone might say, hey, what about Zuffa boxing? That's going to start, right? Dana White has been pretty clear that he doesn't really, he's not very interested in bringing his MMA guys over to fight in the ring. He wants it to be boxers boxing. So really, for anyone to be talking about any of these fighters in particular to be talking about doing it, it's just fun conversations like you and me saying, "Hey, who would win a fight between Chris Cyborg and Kayla Harrison?" It's kind of
Well,
it's just hypotheticals that don't really have any place in the real world, unfortunately.
it's also worth looking at like which fighters are saying it. Like if they're represented by anybody, I think that is worth looking at. If you're represented by Ali, if you're represented by whomever, I think it's worth looking at, like who represents who has the best relationship with the UFC. A lot of these like contracts that the UFC fighters sign, there's a matching clause, there's a non-competes, etc. Sometimes if you have a good agent, you don't have the matching clause. A lot of fighters didn't have matching, like Conor McGregor doesn't have a matching clause in his contract. Stuff like that. So.
Conor McGregor is a unicorn to this sport, though, you
Oh,
know?
I'm using that one strategically. More that like if you depending on who you're represented by and their relationship with the UFC, it'll change kind of how you can move pre and post career. Same thing with Ngannou, right? Ngannou left. And he boxed. He was
That was a different case though. They
UFC said get out.
kind of there were no. It was a little different than that. It was the fact that usually it used to be they used to be able to add on these years to these contracts, especially if you were the champions. There was a limitation placed on it at the time. It's kind of evolved if you, especially if you follow some of the reporting of John S. Nash,
Yeah.
who's been kind of on this for many years and a really good source of that type of information. But it essentially he has reported over the years how much it has kind of evolved, and that was a thing. But my understanding is that it is now closed.
Yeah.
That is not really an option anymore. So that's why we don't necessarily. That was kind of a unicorn in of itself too. The Ngannou situation may or may not actually be available anymore, barring any sort of changes from some of the other litigation that's still in progress, right? We
Yes.
keep hearing about it time and again. There are different lawsuits in progress that are trying to be figured out, and that could force business model changes. But as of now, my understanding is that's not really going to be a thing.
Yeah. Well, then we keep on chugging along. The champions want out and they want to box and do all the other stuff.
And can't hate it, if they want the money,
Get the
I get
bag,
it, but
dude. Your
it's just
career's
what's
so
available, that's the problem.
you're
But
in the most
hey, if they want to do it, go nuts. Have fun with
go for
talking
it.
about it. I
Go
can't
for
tell
it.
you to stop.
They are in the most cutthroat business in the world. They need to only care about themselves. That's it. Like there's no free handouts that are going to come to you. It almost never happens. So I digress. good conversation there. Scott, we have quick hits coming up. That'll wrap up kind of where we're at with the UFC. Obviously, we have, a 6 week break here. I don't think we have another UFC card until was it
It's
January
January 24. We've got a
24th. This
while,
is
dude. We got
over
way
a month.
more. Yeah, yeah, we've got a lot. We're gonna fill it pretty well. But hey, you know what? Before we even think about that, let's get to those quick hits, right? We've got a couple of news and notes, some good, some unfortunate. And let's start with this, like minorly unfortunate, but also unclear, right? UFC light heavyweight champion Alex Pereira. He has appeared to wave the white flag on fighting at the White House. Put out a tweet just yesterday or Monday, that is, reading, looks like White House is a no-go, all caps, for
Oh man,
exclamation
I
points.
didn't even see that.
Just just doesn't sound good for that John
In the
Jones dream
headline,
fight. But look, you never know. Maybe there's some sort of posturing here. I mean, it is what it is. This is
Conor
not some
McGregor.
sort of is exactly anything could be a possibility here, right? On the PFL side, we heard there was we knew that there was going to be a Madrid card coming up in the new year. It's going to be on March 20th, but we now know it is going to be headlined by a middleweight title fight between the current champion Costello Van Steenis and the 2025 tournament champion Fabian Edwards, brother of Leon Edwards, who this is not his first time fighting one of the champions in this sport,
Oh, yeah.
one way or the other, outside of the UFC. So there's at least something interesting going on there on the PFL side. Some very disturbing news, I guess we could call it. 10 fight UFC veteran Alex Garcia. I don't know if you remember him, Eric, but he was one of three people arrested as part of a just gigantic drug bust in Montreal the other day. Police seized what they have said is equal to about $1.7 million worth of cocaine, also some heroin, some GHB, drugs and money, of course, that kind of thing, and guns, I believe, as well. So, and there's also, I believe, two people that are still at large that are trying to seek for that. But as far as the MMA goes, this is very unfortunate and disturbing news regarding a veteran of the sport, someone who fought 10 times in the UFC, right?
Yeah.
And then this is also incredibly unfortunate news. 72 fight MMA veteran heavyweight Geronimo Mondragon dos Santos, who once was signed by the UFC way back, I want to say like a decade or so ago, but he never did end up competing for them. I want to say it was like maybe visa issues or something like that. It was reported he has died at age 45 from an apparent drowning in his native Brazil. That was reported from Globo. So he had recently actually been booked to fight Andrei Arlovsky and beat KFC back in June, but he withdrew. So there's your kind of very recent tie to him in the news, but that's unfortunate. And, thoughts go out to the family.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you giving us those quick hits. Thankfully, there's no three bets in 3 minutes this week because there's no fights. And I was one
How'd
and
you do
two.
last week?
1 and 2.
Okay.
I had Giga, I had Brandon Royval, and I had Bruno Ferreira. Bruno Ferreira was easy. Giga looked terrible. He needs to retire. And Brandon Royval, we saw how that went. So I think I ended the year like 3 of my last 10. It wasn't good. So we will move on to next year.
Yeah,
New
you can
slate.
leave that. You can leave that year in the
Yep.
dust, maybe.
I'm
Maybe
gonna
we start
leave.
afresh, right?
I'm gonna leave my end of the year in the dust. We will move on to the final round where we had some homework. I had never seen this fight, and it was pretty wild. So, Scott,
Hanato Babalu Sobral
yep,
against David Heath. Babalu being, of course, he someone
2007.
2007, yeah, UFC 74, I believe. This was on the prelims, and Babalu, this was only a year after he'd fought Chuck Liddell for the light heavyweight title, almost exactly to the day. And really, he was like a top 20 light heavyweight guy for just about his entire career. Hasn't fought since 2013, but he had a decent career, and he was very well regarded at this point when he fought David Heath to well, what did you think of this fight? Because there's a particular reason I chose this fight, and I think you know why.
Well, so I thought it was interesting. It was the beginning. The first round is someone falls into guard and then starts spamming elbows, and then someone else sweeps it, falls into guard, and then starts spamming elbows. It's interesting that both of them did the same thing in the first round. And then second round, it
Babalu
was
was a little more effective.
Babalu is definitely more effective. Second round, we got crazy amounts of blood.
Just
Crazy
a
amounts of,
gusher.
yeah, I
It
mean, just
was
gushing. And
like a
again,
pool of blood behind David Heath's head from this giant cut
yeah.
somewhere along here. Just,
Um,
I had forgotten, Eric, how bloody this fight was.
it
That's not
was
why I
so
picked
bloody. I
it.
believe it was Mario Yamasaki was the referee. Easily could have
Steve
stopped it.
Mazzagatti. Steve
Oh, sorry, Steve
Mazzagatti.
Maz. It was the one that Dana White didn't like. It was Steve
Yeah.
Maz. Well, sorry, say it again.
Mazzagatti.
Steve Mazzagatti, who ended up, I believe, the UFC was like, no more. We can't do any more Steve Mazzagatti.
Still a timekeeper in Nevada.
Okay, there you go. So you have that. Steve Mazzagatti is like, taking a close look, taking a closer look, and just never goes in there, never stops it. David Heath fights up to Turtle, and then Anaconda choke, which is probably one of my favorite chokes in jiu-jitsu. But Anaconda choke, Gator
Dave
roll.
Schultz front headlock, I believe, is it was
It
announced
was a
because
red X.
that's the catch wrestling term, I believe,
Yep,
for it.
yep. I was confused by that too. So yeah,
Catch
Gator.
wrestling, they always have an analogous over there, yeah.
Yeah, so Gator roll to Anaconda choke, and then just didn't let go. It was like for a while, just didn't let go for
Refused to let go,
refused.
was
Yes, that's
told
the
to
right
let
word.
go,
Yes,
looked, he knew what he was doing.
yes,
Babalu very much did. And not only did you think that when you're watching it, but
yep,
then after in that post-fight presser, which is why I stressed you gotta watch that
yep,
part, he confirmed, yeah, I had to teach him a lesson. He called me MFer the day
yeah,
before. He didn't like being called MFer, so he said, okay, I'm just gonna choke you unconscious, even though you told me to you wanted out.
yep. And
Which is
Rogan was on that the
crazy.
whole way.
Yeah, but he still was kind of like, all right, whatever, dude. Can't wait
Yeah,
to see you again. And then we
yeah,
never
yeah,
saw him
yeah,
again.
yep, yep.
Never saw him again. But like, let me ask you
Oh,
though,
so
just
that was
because
it.
that was the reason. Yes, that was
Oh
it. We
wow.
never saw him fight in the UFC again. He went on a strike force. He won the light heavyweight title over there. He actually at some point had a catchweight 195-pound fight with Robbie Lawler. This is
Oh
pre-UFC
yeah,
welterweight title run, Robbie Lawler. When he was kind of lost in the woods and fighting at middleweight, really ought not to have been. He was kind of a blown up 195 and he beat Lawler. No
wow,
surprise. He was
that's
larger and
crazy.
a good fighter too.
Lawler was really good at Strikeforce too.
Decent fight. You can go back and watch that one if you're
Yeah,
curious. That's not your homework, but if you want to. But yeah, like that was it. And Dana was like, we're done. Like he
yeah,
never brought him back. It didn't matter. It was kind of the same situation as Paul Daly. He crossed the line. The crowd really turned on him. I don't know if you heard in the
yes,
background some of the cat calls. There was people calling him all this like CSer and all this stuff. And I was
yeah.
like, yo, I can't believe that's still on the audio. You still heard it.
Yeah,
It was
I noticed
crazy.
that too. And it's funny too, because like we've seen a choke get let that go on too long. Like, Brian Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez, I believe it was. Brian Ortega had an arm triangle. The referee tried to grab him, and he was like, "Let go, let go, let go." He was like, "Wait, what?" And then afterwards, he was asked about it. He was like, I got punched in the ear. I can't hear anything. I'm like deaf right now." So like he's saying stop. I'm like, I don't know unless you literally pull me off. I have no idea.
That was a
This
different situation.
this
There was no
was not the
malice.
case. This was not the
This
case.
was pure intent. It was
Yes.
like evil, dude. I mean,
Yeah,
he
it
wasn't trying
was.
to be evil. He was just way too like blindly angry,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah, and it was not just that.
And
It was
it
all,
cost him.
and think about a choke too, where the cut on David Heath's face was so bad that it was leaking so bad. The choke makes it so to get graphic. It makes it so much worse because the blood is already cutting off the artery of your windpipe, and terrible. Wild. I can't.
Absolutely crazy.
Did you
Were you offended by it? Were you offended when you watched it?
no.
No.
No, I was offended by the blood, honestly. The blood, I thought that Mazzagatti should have changed that, should have called it there. I didn't need the
So
rest of it.
you're cool with him just being a jerk and holding on to the choke even after he taps out. A jiu-jitsu guy.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it happen more than once. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Not good etiquette though.
It's not good etiquette. Dude, there is a one
Now I'm worried about rolling with you one day. You're gonna hold on to a choke on me. What are you
dude.
doing?
So I was coaching, I was helping coach a jujitsu tournament for some of the white belts. They were competing for the first time, and
Mhm.
I was watching one of the coaches of the other team, who one of my guys ended up going up against. He would choke them out unconscious before every match. They would bring them over off to the side with the mats and put them in a rear naked choke and choke them out, and they would do it willingly. They wouldn't fight it, and then you'd pull up their legs so that the blood goes back to the head faster.
Sure.
Um, yeah, I've seen just a lot of weird shit in this game.
The Jits community is is unique. I will
Training.
say that. But yeah, that's a bridge too
It
far
was
for
a fun
me.
one.
I'm not in it for that, right?
It was a fun one. So we have a lot of extra time for this next 4 weeks. Is the homework assignments going to be increasing? I'm bored, man, on the weekends. I need to.
I think I might have to. I think we'll try to
Yeah.
find some experiences, but for this one, I'm giving you two fights though. We'll just do
Okay.
two. And I'm going with the two fight series of Jose Aldo against Chad Mendes. I bet you've seen at least one of these, if not both.
I believe
But
I've definitely seen at least one.
I can guarantee that our guy Jake here, who is I'm sure watching at home or wherever he is, he can watch this homework as well. We'll also talk to him about Babalu. But yeah, those two fights they were in 2012 and 2014, both for the featherweight title. Memorable fights in different ways. So again, if you don't remember which one you watched, watch them both, Eric. I think you'll have a good time.
I loved featherweight back then. This was like I think this was like peak featherweight for me at least. You had so many contenders. Even like Charles Oliveira and Dustin Poirier were like they were deep fighters, but they were in the weight class.
Peak
At one
even
point.
before Connor's ascent, huh?
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
A
Okay.
100%. Well, when Connor became like big, and that's when I started jumping in. I started going back and watching his potential opponents. I wanted to know who fought who,
Sure.
what was the lore, etc. So that was me back in like 2015, trying to find out
Some self homework.
yeah, I was doing all self homework. I'd go to the treadmill. I had a Fight Pass subscription. I just watch fights on the treadmill for
Hmm.
hours per week. But yeah, this week in MMA, hit me. What do we got?
This week in MMA, we're going back 10 years, December 19, 2015. So happy 10 years to the UFC debut of the women's flyweight GOAT, Valentina Shevchenko,
Hmm.
who stunned former Strikeforce women's bantamweight champion Sarah Kaufman, getting a win. 8 days notice she stepped up to fight Jermaine Durandame for that one.
Wow.
So just think we didn't get Shevchenko coming in here as some sort of big touted person who we were trying to see something for. She literally was like, "Yo, we lost a fight. Are you ready?" She's like, "Yes, I will fight."
Yeah.
And the rest is history. She goes in there, she beats her, and she just kind of keeps on winning and basically hasn't lost much at all except for to another goat, Amanda Nunes.
I think.
And of course there was the surprise fight against Alexa Grasso.
Yep.
Everybody kind of seems to have, not everybody, but a lot of fighters have those fights where it's just like, yo, that one? Really? Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Now, and then the draw too was a little weird, but
I think regardless of sport, Valentina Shevchenko's, and we could probably debate about this forever. Valentina Shevchenko might be one of the best female athletes of all time, regardless of sport. I mean, just look at all MMA training at a really young age. She does the dancing, before and after every fight or after every fight. So Valentina Shevchenko, an all-time legend, and still going, which is pretty crazy.
oh, I could throw a bunch of names out from all over the sports world, but we're an MMA show. We'll stick to
Yeah.
MMA, and I will give you not just one more fight, Eric, but because you're bored, you want some more fights, I'm going to give you two more fights for this weekend. They're both Saturday. We're going to go with KSW 113, which the main card starts at noon Eastern time. It's over in I believe Poland. But if you want to watch that one, that is a pay-per-view that you can watch through kswtv.com. The headliner on this card, my welterweight from our prospect show, Adrian Bartoshinsky, is going to defend his title against Muslim Tulshayev. That is an interesting fight. I'm very interested how much longer we have to wait before we see Bartoshinsky maybe make his way over to the UFC. I think I'd be interested to see how he could do against some of those guys over there for all the reasons I said back in that September show.
Yep.
Second show for you though. Later that evening, Saturday night, CFFC 149. Four championship fights on this really impressive regional show. And includes my men's flyweight prospect Bilal Hassan defending his title against Rinaldi Mance. I hope I'm saying that right. But that one, the main card starts at 8:30 Eastern. That one you could just watch on Fight Pass. If you got Fight Pass, you're good. And also, if you happen to be local to my area, I know you're down in Tampa area, my friend, but if you're around in New York, New Jersey, Philly area even, you can head on over to Atlantic City and go to the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino, and you can check that out. That's a really cool card.
Both good shouts. KSW obviously has a pretty solid UFC connection right now, so you might be right about your welterweight prospect. And yeah, that'll do it for the show. I appreciate everybody jumping in here with us as we end the year. We miss Jake, but I believe that we'll. Is he back next week? Or I think he's out next week, right, for
I
Christmas?
believe he's back next week.
He's back next. Okay.
This show is coming out early, as you noticed. We're gonna
Yeah.
have another one that comes out ahead of Christmas because I know you and I will be celebrating in the spirit of the festivities as well. So we're gonna re-recording that one early. Maybe it'll come out on Christmas. Maybe it'll come out a day before. We'll figure that out. But stay tuned. Thanks for watching, Jake. We missed you. We're looking forward to it. And guys, have a fantastic week.
That'll do it for final round. Have a great day, everybody.